Hello and welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy and I'll be hosting this show today, Labor Day, September 3rd, 2018. First graphic is the fire danger graphic. There are no watches, warnings, or advisories anywhere expected or forecast around the state for the next couple of days. Although there are some gale warnings out for the marine areas. They'll kick in later tonight and continue through Tuesday. That'll be for the central Aleutians. Could see gusts 45, maybe 50 miles an hour and into the south central Bering Sea. Otherwise, fire danger here reappeared. Not much, well, virtually no precipitation fell in this area since yesterday. I was kind of surprised at how it elevated back up into extreme levels here, but that's how the chart looks today. Again, same place it's been all summer there in the Yukon Flats, upper Yukon Valley, and the extreme zone there is right at the, or centered more or less at the intersection of the Porcupine and Yukon rivers. And it doesn't look like they'll get much precipitation there over the next 36 hours, maybe in the next 3 days or 3 or 4 days. A system will finally bring some wetting rains into that area, but that's just a possibility at this point. Otherwise, fire danger not a factor at all anywhere else in the state. On the satellite, you can see kind of a contrast here between the central and southern part of the state, the panhandle, and then all this moisture and cloudiness up to the north. And again, this satellite imagery picks up mostly the high-level clouds associated with frontal system storminess. So the actual clouds may extend farther south here than what's shown on this picture, and definitely is a lot more out here over the Gulf of Alaska, especially the Bering Sea, than what's shown. But you can see the general flow pattern here is mostly west to east, coming over a big area of high pressure now that's slowly shifting eastward over the Bering Sea. And the moisture out here with storminess trying to push into the western Aleutians, goes up and over the top of that high and then back into the Arctic coast and northern interior areas. And rolling that again, you can see the kind of the clockwise flow with high pressure out here up over the northern Bering Sea. Next system pushing in toward the, pushing into the western Aleutians there with clouds all the way to Adak, increasing over Atka. But not much going on for the remainder of the Bering Sea east side there. Again, under high pressure, light winds, just areas of low clouds, patchy fog here along the coast and westward up to St. Lawrence Island. Pick up a little bit of a breeze there with gusts of 30 miles an hour today reported at Savunga. And the Panhandle finally losing that shower activity, pushing well off south of Watson Lake there into Canada with that system. So dry day today, starting to see some clouds showing up right off the south coast there. Nothing significant, but a big batch of moisture back to the southwest. That's going to be streaming northeastward tonight across the Queen Charlottes. And then that'll spread some rain into the Dixon entrance area late tonight and early tomorrow. And by tomorrow afternoon, there's a chance of rain across the southern areas, Annette, Heidelberg, Metlakatla, and maybe Klawock and those areas there, possibly Ketchikan, while the northern areas stay dry and eventually and even sunny farther to the north. Sunshine south central Alaska today. On the chart, very weak frontal boundary right through here, give or take there. And just not a lot of precipitation with it, just a few hundredths of an inch, generally less than a tenth of an inch along that, 3, 4, 5 hundredths, although a little bit heavier up here over the eastern Arctic coast. Kaktovik today, 12-hour period, picking up about a quarter of an inch. And then on down to near Galbraith Lake, they picked up also about 2/10 to roughly a quarter of an inch during the day today. And then that scatters out as you head back to the west. Very weak trough here, brought an increase in low clouds, possible fog, maybe a little drizzle. Mostly along the Yukon Delta coast, nothing really significant there except for maybe lowering the flying conditions and also breezy conditions, St. Lawrence Island, no precipitation there reported either at Savunga or Gamble. We have the strong 1,032 millibar high, and that's creating the gradient there, picking those winds up from St. Lawrence Island, actually through the Bering Strait up along the northwest coast there. Cape Lisburne, gusts 45 miles an hour today out of the southwest due to the gradient between the low here that's back off the chart there and this rather strong high. South Central Alaska, a lot of clear skies today, light winds, sunshine, temperatures rising to near 70 in some areas. Ski Lac Guard Station reported 70 degrees at 3 p.m. this afternoon, as did Big Lake and Eagle River. So very nice September 3rd, Monday here. And again, not bad down across the Panhandle. Some clouds in the Gulf of Alaska under that 1,024 millibar high, and some rain pushing into the Aleutians, with also tightening gradient here for the same reason as we got the winds up there. With that front pressing, putting a squeeze on the atmosphere, and again, gale force winds will kick into the central Aleutians later tonight. Ahead of that front, as it pushes a band of rain with a triple point here into the Adak-Atka area, and gales, minimum gales, 35 knots, will develop in this area and shift up into the south central Bering, continue through tomorrow. And this high pressure zone gradually moving eastward, but pretty flat in the top, westerly flow carrying some really weak troughs eastward here. Some showers and clouds linger because of this weak system, and then another weak one, same pattern you saw today here. Really nothing significant precipitation-wise, just again, possible fog, drizzle, lower flying conditions with those. Frontal boundary persists here along the central and eastern Arctic coast for a chance of light rain at times tonight as the main center of low pressure pulls off to the east, stays clear and dry, light wind southern Alaska, and mostly cloudy there for the Tanana Valley, risk of a shower over the White Mountains, and mostly clear here for the Panhandle. Again, that warm front moisture spreads over the Queen Charlotte Islands and kind of increasing low clouds and fog over the Gulf of Alaska, maybe in toward the coastline. And looking at tomorrow, we'll see this area of rain actually moves northeast and expands northward. And by tomorrow afternoon, it's into the southern portions there. Again, Heidelberg, a much better chance than, say, Klawock or Craig, and also Annette and Metlakatla, probably a little better chance than Ketchikan. No rain, and probably mostly sunny here farther to the north. Another sunny day, Copper River Basin, Susitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula, sunshine, Kodiak Island, another sunny, warm day there tomorrow. Bristol Bay on up into the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, as well as areas from Sleep, moved up to Nikolai and McGrath, and then you pick the clouds up north of the Alaska Range. Keep going north, and the rainfall chances increase. Pretty good zone here, maybe some moderate showers over the central interior, right along Tanana and the Yukon River. And warm front rains there. Looks wet and breezy along the Arctic coast. And then that same pattern here along the Yukon Delta coast, Norton Sound, and St. Lawrence Island, although winds will be lighter tomorrow. This high center edging in toward the coastline right over St. Lawrence Island, right over Nunivak Island. Next system here, again, kind of not making too great an eastward progress due to this blocking effect of this high, so it's going to kind of stay stationary there. And we're looking at the gale force winds will probably diminish over the central Aleutians tomorrow afternoon, but persist over the south central Bering Sea as the tighter gradient shifts up to the north and northwest. Rainfall won't make it much past Atka, so a dry day for Unalaska and Nikolsky. And then for Wednesday, that system really weakens. The first surge kind of is this trough right here, develops and tries to shove through the ridge, which is now retreating and weakening back to the south, another center off to the east. Low pressure brings more rain and not so much in the way of wind due to the track of the low center itself, but looks pretty wet and cloudy for the Arctic coast and North Slope on down into the Brooks Range. Some of that might slip into the northern upper Yukon Valley, but not too much. Another sunny, warm day, temperature 60s, lower 70s, southern Alaska. And again, rain chances hold there over the southern southeast coast with that persistent low pressure area. Lows tonight down that way, 45 to 50. Mid-40s central interior, lower 30s eastern Arctic coast, maybe down around 29 or 30 in some locations. 40s out over the Aleutians. Highs tomorrow, 65 to 70 again. South central Alaska, Susitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula. Lower to mid-60s, Bristol Bay. Mid-60s, maybe higher there for Kodiak Island. And in the lower 60s for the Panhandle. And then your lows the following morning, well down into the 30s again, North Slope, eastern Arctic coast, but may stay above freezing. 45 to 50 over the panhandle. And then your highs for Wednesday afternoon looking like this, near 40 for the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coastlines, and highs in the 40s for the North Slope, into the Brooks Range, south of the mountains, mid-50s, upper Yukon Valley, some areas upper 50s, into the northern Kuskokwim Valley. And again, another sunny day here, 60s in the Copper River Basin, 65 to 70 south central Alaska, mid-60s for the Bristol Bay area and the Panhandle.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First flying weather graphic today for Tuesday morning. A lot of low flying conditions here from the Bering Sea. You can see surges of IFR, one coming into the western central Aleutians, another one here moving into the eastern Bering Sea, heading up toward the southwest coast, eastern Aleutians, affecting the Alaska Peninsula, just reaching Nunavik Island. Smaller batch here, Yukon Delta, across Norton Sound, the southern Seward Peninsula. IFR along the Arctic coast, southward and toward the Brooks Range. Marginal VFR in the interior. VFR holding Bristol Bay, Kodiak, right up across Cook Inlet in the Madanuska Valley, Copper River Basin. IFR off the coast here in the Gulf of Alaska, west central Gulf. Marginal VFR over to the southeast coast. In the afternoon, that burns back off the coast there, very close on the Prince of Wales coastline, Prince of Wales Island coastline with VFR otherwise. And another VFR day here, Copper River Basin, areas south and east of the Alaska Range, Bristol Bay. Kodiak Island got some marginal VFR possibly showing up there along the east side of Fogneck and Kodiak Islands. And out in the Bering Sea, patch of IFR just north of the Alaska Peninsula, and then another batch, bigger batch here, sort of hanging back off the coast, and then this next surge sort of sliding east-northeastward. Marginal VFR pretty widespread here north of the mountains, all the way out to the Arctic coast. And then for Wednesday morning, we've got IFR along the Arctic coast continuing, and a couple of impulses here, one right along the south side of the western Brooks Range, along mountain areas, Seward Peninsula, smaller patch, and then over here near the, roughly around the White Mountains, maybe into the central Tanana Valley, roughly around Fairbanks eastward, up to the mountains there, and the Hot Springs area. So marginal VFR, or IFR now in the eastern Gulf of Alaska, but staying well south of Yakutat with marginal VFR barely reaching the coastline. VFR for the Panhandle, lots of IFR out in the Bering Sea. And the afternoon, that pretty much holds in a stationary out here. IFR for the Aleutians, big chunk of the Bering right up to St. Lawrence Island. And then VFR again, Yukon Kuskokwim Delta, Kodiak Island, southern Alaska, marginal north of the Alaska Range all the way up to the Arctic coast, with IFR up there kind of just grazing the Wainwright Point Lay area, and VFR down across the Panhandle. Passes, Anatuvik, marginal VFR tomorrow, lower conditions, possibly IFR on the northern entrance, and that forecast holds for Adigan as well. And Lake Clark and Merrill, another VFR day coming up. Probably see some clouds lowering a little bit there on the western entrance, but it won't hit the marginal category. However, for rainy, it may very well become marginal on the western entrance, otherwise VFR. And for windy, north side, possibly marginal, otherwise VFR. And for Isabel, looks like optimistically VFR, either approach and through the pass. And for Mentasta, same forecast. Tanita, VFR. Good VFR for Portage. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, along with the surface there, a little bit inland from that position. Otherwise, 2,000 to 4,000, increases 6,000 feet there along the Brooks Range. Warmer as you head south, 8,000 feet to 10,000 feet here over the southwest interior. 8,000 feet right down to Dixon Entrance. Some pretty warm air out here over the south central Bering Sea, central Aleutians up to 12 to 14,000. And with that, moisture sliding northeastward here, this area of icing will be above 12,000 feet, so really not much of a problem out there. And then we've got some icing possibilities above about 6,000 feet here up over the Arctic coast North Slope areas of the isolated rime variety. And then this batch slipping on in, mostly affecting Dixon Entrance, may or may not reach the southern southeast coast. Jet stream, good upper level ridge here, shifting eastward, but good flow over the top, 90 knots out of the west-northwest here, then cutting southeastward or southwestward, and then ridging, keeping this jet mostly off to the east, and this jet mostly down to the south. And for 9,000 feet, 30-knot winds through the central interior and the Arctic coast, lighter under the ridge, southerlies 25 to 40 into the Bering Sea. Same forecast at 3,000 feet here, south to north flow. 25 to 35, westerlies through the interior up to 25, light northerlies, light winds for the panhandle. And turbulence, isolated moderate chop here, Brooks Range on down to St. Lawrence Island, a little bumpier out over the Aleutians. And after the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining us today is Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Thank you for joining us, Eric.
My pleasure, Dave.
Thank you. And you're joining us here to talk a little bit more about satellites and how satellites work, and especially one neat feature that's working over Alaska right now. What is that?
Well, there's a lot of weather satellites and a lot of instruments on these satellites, and there are new generations going up and new instruments. This includes something called the Day-Night Band, which is not a cover band at the local bar, but it's a new satellite that is very useful, especially here in Alaska, especially in the winter.
In the wintertime, yeah, that makes it a little bit hard to use some of the normal tools that we associate with weather satellite imagery.
Right. You know, one of the classic weather satellite instruments is just visible light. What would the human eye see if you were riding on a weather satellite yourself and looked down and it was black and white? You'd see the clouds reflecting the sunlight. And we've got an example from the Pacific Ocean. There's a geostationary satellite, and we can see that the eastern side of the image is in daylight. The western side, it's night over there, so you don't see anything because there's no sunlight over there. And visible imagery, it's very intuitive. You see the clouds just like you see them standing on the ground, but now you're a satellite seeing them from above. But the problem is, what about the night side of the planet? How do you track the storms? How do you know where the rain is, the snow, the weather, if you can't see the clouds? And that's why, just like a television can change from one channel to another, or radio can change stations, satellites can change the frequency of the electromagnetic spectrum that they're looking at. We can go to infrared instead of visible light. You know, it's heat energy. You can see heat, and we've got another satellite picture from the same time, same satellite, out over the Pacific Ocean. That's the infrared side, and we're seeing temperature there. And even at night, when there's no light, everything still has a temperature.
So we're sensing something with a thermometer instead of perhaps the visible side of that, is what you're saying?
That's right. On this depiction, colder features are lighter shades, warmer features are dark. And so clouds tend to be colder than the ground. Clouds are higher in the atmosphere, it's cooler. And so that very same image on the western or the left-hand side of the globe, now we can see the clouds there, even though it's nighttime, because we're seeing the temperatures. And one nice feature is that tropical storm there, just in the middle of the northern hemisphere there, hurricane or typhoon, depending on...
That's that swirly part that we see in the middle of the image?
There you go. You can even see the eye on it there, especially in the infrared image. So we've got two kinds of imagery there from the same satellite, different instruments, you know, different channels like on a television, visible and infrared. You know, it turns out there's no one magic tool. Each has its strengths, each has its flaws, weaknesses. The visible is nice, it's intuitive, it's easy to understand, but doesn't work at night. Infrared is nice, it works at night, you can see temperatures, but there is a catch. What if your clouds and the nearby bare ground or open water, what if those were about the same temperature?
Oh, that's going to be hard to figure out what's going on.
If you can only see temperature and you have two features that are the same temperature, they will look the same. You won't be able to tell. They're camouflaged. This happens, especially, it can happen around Alaska, especially over the ocean when you have low clouds that are the same temperature as the open water.
That happens quite a bit in Alaska.
We have an example. Now, this is from a different geostationary satellite. It's down over the Atlantic Ocean. Look in the South Atlantic. In infrared, we've highlighted in a yellow circle there. There's some patches of clouds, but it looks like there's a clear area in the middle of that image. That's the infrared look. But let's take a look at the visible channel, and we can see there's a stripe of clouds across the middle of that circle that is only visible in the visible. The trick here is that those are low clouds of about the same temperature as the surrounding ocean. So from an infrared point of view, where you're seeing temperature, The clouds in the water nearby are the same temperature. They look the same. It's only on the visible that you can see what stands out as the actual imagery.
Okay.
Two tools, each have their strengths and weaknesses. Can we combine them? That's where the day-night band comes in.
Okay.
It's a super sensitive visible sensor that can actually see by moonlight. It can even see the aurora.
Wow.
And in Alaska, we have long winter nights. We can use that day-night band. Here's an example from that storm that blew the Kullik drilling platform ashore near Kodiak Island in December back in 2012. This image is right near when that storm happened, and it's in the middle of the night in December.
But this looks like visible imagery.
Looks like daytime imagery. It's amazing. That sensor can take any little bit of moonlight and just make the most of it. And we can see so much detail. Even in the northern part of the image there, you can see some aurora up there. The northern lights.
That's that band that goes across the Arctic slope?
You got it. That's the northern lights. We're seeing black and white image here, so you don't get the green or the purple colors there. But that is the aurora. There's another example of the day-night band, and this is from January of 2013. It's about 4 in the morning, and this is a snapshot from Weather Service software. And we can even see in the middle of the image, there's the lights of Fairbanks and North Pole over to Eielson Air Force Base. Anchorage and Matsu lights, city lights, are evident as well. Sure, we can see, even though it's 4 in the morning in January, there is no sunlight to be had, that just enough moonlight is available that this sensor can see that. So we're trying to solve that puzzle where visible light is good, but only during the daytime. IR is good at night, but you can't see the difference between clouds and ground sometime. The day-night band is an attempt to do the best of both with one tool. And it's brand new for Alaska here, and we're hoping to use it in the forecast process and help predict storms, weather patterns, to help get good forecasts for people.
Okay, another tool in the weather toolkit for meteorologists in Alaska and researchers worldwide. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining us today. And you can learn more about Dehne and the day-night band by going to the web address that you see on your screen. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at the sea ice analysis for today. Not a lot different from yesterday. Still this pretty good zone of heavier ice right through here, and a fair amount of heavier ice all the way down to about near Prudhoe Bay eastward, and kind of hung up along the barrier islands and sort of building southward to the barrier islands. Nothing significant, but still a pretty narrow zone there of less ice along the coastline. And then, of course, that significantly improves back here to the west. And winds are, over the next several days, are going to be something like going from south to northwest. And so really not looking for a lot of change, kind of just this area zone through here, just kind of shifting around a little bit from one day or two to the next. And for the coastal water forecast, light winds here for the coast. East 15 is about as high as it gets down on the south coast with 5-foot seas, otherwise 10 knots to the north. Light variable winds at 10 here over the inside waters, seas 2 feet. And then picking up out of the north, 20 knots. Link Canal, 4-foot seas on Wednesday, 10 knots from the north, Stevens Passage, and about 15 knot northerly winds in store for Clarence Strait. Light northerlies on the south coast, seas 5 to 6 feet, and 10 to 15 out of the north for the north coast. Prince William Sound, light southwest breeze tomorrow at 10 with 2-foot seas. West 10 knots for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Back to the west, it'll become southwest at 15. 20 knots for the Barrens, Kamishak Bay, and southwest 10 to 15 for Cook Inlet. On Wednesday, they'll swing around to the north, 10 to 15 knots for Cook Inlet with 2 to 3-foot seas. West 20 for Kamishak Bay. We've got small craft advisories now for the Barren Islands. Northwest 25. Light northwesterlies, Prince William Sound, north 15, North Gulf Coast, seas only 4 feet. Bristol Bay, northwest at 10, and Alaska Peninsula variable at 10 with 3 to 4-foot seas. Southwest to Sitkinak, north 15, southwesterlies 10 to 15 for Kodiak. Outlook for Wednesday, a little pickup in the winds here, west for Shelikof Strait at 15, northwest 20 now on the east side of Kodiak, and that'll extend back to Castle Cape and the Alaska Peninsula. Westerlies 10 to 15, 2 to 4-foot seas, northwest at 10 for Bristol Bay. Out in the Aleutians, tomorrow Gales, as I mentioned, into the central Aleutians with that front pressing eastward, putting a squeeze on the atmosphere enough with that big high to the northeast that we'll see 35 to 40 knot southeasterlies here shift into the central Aleutians, falling back to about 20 knots the farther west you go with those 10-foot seas. Seas building as high as 17 feet there, south side of the islands, and then 20 to 30 knot winds for the eastern Aleutians. Outlook for Wednesday, southerlies on average for Unalaska Island, 15 to 20, as well as the Unmak Island area, 20 to 25. Small craft advisories now southeast 25, Adak and Atka, and east-southeast 20. There for the far western Aleutians, hanging on to about 30 knots here from Kiska over toward Adak. And for the southwest coast, north 10 to 15 tomorrow, southeast 15 for the Pribilof, south 20 for St. Matthew Island, west 20 St. Lawrence Island, as well as Norton Sound. And for Wednesday, south to southwest 15 St. Lawrence Island and Norton Sound, and southwest 10 to 15 here along the southwest coast. Really not too bad, 3 to 5 foot seas, south 20, 7-foot seas for the Pribilofs, 10-foot seas to go with a 20-knot wind there for St. Matthew Island. And eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, southeast 15, seas in open waters 3 to 4 feet, southwest 20, central coast 5-foot seas, and that extends back down to Cape Beaufort, and small craft advisories down to Cape Thompson for west 25 knots, so wind stays kind of breezy there like today, and then 20-knot winds for the Chukchi Sea. Southwest 25, Wales up to Cape Thompson, and then we've got 20-knot winds turning southerly on the west side of the Arctic coast, northwest 15, central coast west 20 knots now for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast with 4 to 5 foot seas. For tonight, weak frontal boundary through there will keep it occasional light rain going, not probably as much as what you saw today for the eastern Arctic coast, but it'll stay damp and unsettled up there with that boundary, and then showers with a weak trough here into the interior, and even weaker systems with less moisture back to the west, but this will keep the flying conditions, visibility ceilings lower, high pressure, light winds, low clouds, fog, Bering Sea into the coastline. No change for southern Alaska or the Panhandle, but that warm front will shift a chance of rain up tomorrow afternoon into the extreme southern southeast coast. Sunny and warm, 65 to 70 across southern Alaska, cooler and wetter up to the north, and then stays wet across the north slope on Wednesday and sunny in the south.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.